Hi, and welcome to another episode of InstaVision. I'm Glenn Reynolds. Well, we're joined today by best-selling writer, a nuclear and aerospace engineer, a former executive chairman of the National Space Society, and so much more, a founder of the Mars Society. But Bob ZUBRIN is here actually now to talk with us about his new book, Merchants of Despair, Radical Environmentalists, Criminal Pseudoscientists, and the Fatal Cult of Anti-Humanism. Welcome, Bob. Great to be here.
Thanks for inviting me.
So I thought that environmentalists were just nice people who wanted the best for everyone. Am I wrong?
Yes, you're wrong. You're part right in that many of them are nice people who do want the best for everyone, but they're not just that. They're the modern incarnation of an idea that has been around for some time, which I call anti-humanism, and it has taken many incarnations. And what I do in the book is show that there's an invariant here. And it may surprise people, but there's an invariant, and it goes back 200 years to Malthus, who said there's limited resources, and so people will always be starving, to the eugenicists, to the Nazis, to the population controllers, to the environmentalists, to the global warming restrictionists, and so forth.
You know, it's funny because I know in A Christmas Carol, when Scrooge says that it would be better for Tiny Tim to die because it would just help to reduce the surplus population, he's actually reciting a Malthusian view, right? And he's the bad guy in A Christmas Carol, but that's pretty much the view that the zero population growth and environmental communities have today. They're basically Scrooge.
Yes, and it's ironic that the left today has embraced this Malthusian view, which in the 19th century, people who identified themselves with the wealth or the plight of the poor or so forth clearly recognized as the argument of their adversary.
Yeah, so where do you see these manifestations now today of this idea that human beings are some sort of a cancer and that the planet would be better off basically without us, or with at least as few of us as possible?
Well, okay, this is explicitly stated by the Club of Rome in their founding document. They say the earth has cancer and the cancer is man. Just the other day here in Boulder, this controversial abortionist gave a talk in which he said human race is a malignancy upon the earth. And this is repeated. And this basic idea that humans are vermin who are endangering the earth or the scarce resources or something of this sort, and therefore their activities must be constrained, and therefore someone must be empowered to do the constraining. This is fundamentally an argument for oppression and tyranny. In fact,
yeah, we saw just that kind of an argument actually in Scientific American just a few days ago. Gary Sticks, who is one of their writers whom I hold in least regard, had a whole piece basically saying we need global technocratic governance to control climate change and democracy should just get out of the way. And there does seem to be a whole strain of that, doesn't there?
Sure. And, I mean, for example, in 1968, Paul Ehrlich, who is the mentor of John Holdren, who was President Obama's science advisor, he wrote this book called The Population Bomb, in which his population is getting out of control. We need to control population growth. The U.S. should use coercive measures towards the third world, denying foreign aid, denying loans to force them to implement forced sterilization programs. And furthermore, we should have a Bureau of Population Control in the United States, and people should not be allowed to have children without permits. And then John Holdren joined him in writing 3 more books and innumerable papers arguing for this. And a bill was actually introduced into the U.S. Congress with significant support to set up a Bureau of Population for the United States. Fortunately, it was defeated. But these ideas were embraced in China and became the basis of the one-child policy there. And it is a terrific argument for empowering tyrants to have every control of every aspect of human beings' lives in order to save the earth from the evil activities of unfettered humans.
I favor retroactive abortion for tyrants and their sympathizers myself. That's my population control principle. Well, let's talk about a great benefactor of humanity now, Rachel Carson. Tell us what she's done for poor people and children around the world.
Well, Rachel Carson was the point person for the campaign to abolish DDT. Now, people should know something about DDT. DDT saved hundreds of millions of lives in the period from World War II through the late 50s. And that's according to the National Academy of Sciences. It was first used by U.S. troops in Italy to stop the epidemics that the Germans had started there by destroying the sanitation systems of Naples and flooding the Pontine marshes and so forth. And then to the survivors of concentration camps and all sorts of other populations in danger. And then it was used to exterminate malaria in the American South and in Europe and in much of Asia. But in 1958, Aldous Huxley, the author of Brave New World, wrote a book called Brave New World Revisited. And the whole first half of the book is a demand that the population explosion be stopped. And the real problem is DDT, which is causing overpopulation in Africa. That's the same year Rachel Carson got her contract to write the book. And everything in that book, the book is extremely well written, but it's entirely false. In fact, bird populations were not declining in the U.S. She alleged we had to get rid of DDT to save the birds. Birds were increasing rapidly, actually precisely because of DDT, because the main source of bird mortality in the wild are insect parasites. But she got this thing out there, and this became a cause célèbre. And the first, Ruckelhaus, the first head of the Environmental Protection Agency, succeeded in banning DDT and stopping DDT exports to Africa. And as a result, millions of children every year in Africa die now because of malaria. It could be entirely prevented.
So it's an army of Ebenezer Scrooges reducing the surplus population here, all in the name of liberal ideas. Well, let's go to another topic you address in the book. If global warming is the worst calamity to face humanity, and we've seen all kinds of illustrations of how terrible that's supposed to be, the movie The Day After Tomorrow, all of Al Gore's various speechifying, and it's all about how the sea levels are going to rise. I guess when Obama was elected, we put a stop to that. But now you're going to have tsunamis and waves and oceans boiling with blood, real wrath of God stuff. Cats and dogs living together. Oh, wait, no, that's a different movie. But all of this stuff is supposed to happen. It's the worst catastrophe we can imagine, and yet environmentalists are still against nuclear power, which is totally greenhouse friendly. What gives with that?
Well, the idea here is this isn't about the weather. This is about power. Look, during the 1970s, there was a global cooling trend going on, and many of the same people who are now screaming about global warming then started screaming about global cooling. And they said global cooling was being caused by industry, and so we must suppress industry and population growth, which is driving industrial growth, in order to stop the new ice age. Then a warming trend set in the 80s, and they said, well, the warming trend is being caused by industry, which is being driven by population growth, and therefore we must suppress population growth and economic growth to stop global warming. They're against cooling, they're against warming. Actually, they had a better point when they were against cooling, because global cooling would actually be bad. Global warming is actually good. It lengthens the growing season, and CO2 enrichment of the atmosphere accelerates plant growth. If CO2 levels in the atmosphere were declining, that would be a cause for alarm. But actually, the world is becoming more fertile because of human CO2 emissions. So this is a truly crazy argument. But the core of it, though, is this, in the 1970s, the Club of Rome said population growth and economic growth has to be stopped because we're running out of resources. Well, we didn't run out of resources. So now they're saying, well, they have to be stopped because we're running out of the right to use resources. Okay, we have to ration the right to use fire. Okay, the invariant here is we must be put in charge so that we can ration everything, so that we can have power over people. That's what this is all about. That's what it's always been about.
Well, that does seem right. The problems change from year to year, but the solutions are always the same.
That's it.
Final question. Final question. What should people do besides buy this book?
Besides buy this book and give it as presents to everyone they know? Look,
Yeah.
We need to support candidates who will take this on, who understand that these arguments, none of them are true arguments. That is, they're all pretexts. They're pretexts for a policy of expanding the powers of government and suppressing liberty. And, the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States has become a case in point, where at this point they'll even stop people from doing improvements in their own cars that reduce pollution. okay, unless it's done through them through an extremely costly process involving a cost of over $70,000 per car. So the Environmental Protection Agency is not about protecting us from pollution. It's about establishing government control of all aspects of our lives. And I think on this one, Newt Gingrich is on the money. We need to abolish the EPA, both in order to have economic growth and energy security, but also to protect our freedom.
Well, you know, there are quite a few agencies we need to abolish. I've got a little list, and they never will be missed. But thank you for taking the time to join us here today.
Right. Well, thank you.
And that was Bob ZUBRIN. He's the author of Merchants of Despair, Radical Environmentalists, Criminal Pseudoscientists, and the Fatal Cult of Anti-Humanism. Pick it up. It's on sale now, and it's a terrific read, actually. Well, we hope that humanity will survive until next week. But until then, have fun on the internet. See you then. Thanks.